my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got a book talk video to share with you guys. And today we are talking about American Dirt by Jeanine Cummins. Now, before we get into the actual book talk, there's a few things I want to just get out there before we get started. Number one, I picked this book up a few weeks ago, not really knowing much about it. I just saw it at Walmart. I saw that it had a little blurb here from Stephen King saying an extraordinary piece of work. I read the synopsis and I thought it sounded really interesting. So I come home, I kind of put it on the shelf, waiting until it's time to get to it. And as the days went on, because I am on Twitter and I follow a lot of authors and writers and book lovers in general, I started to see and hear the words American Dirt coming up again and again in a very unfavorable light. At that point, that's when I decided to read the book right away and bump it up to the top of the to be read list, read it right away, and not do too much research into what was making this book so problematic. I wanted to go into the book kind of sight unseen, see what I took away from it, how I enjoyed it, and then go back and find out what the controversy is all about. So that's what I did. Now that I'm done and I'm filming, over this weekend I'm going to go dig into what is making this book so problematic. Because here's the thing. I'm obviously a white woman. I live in Canada. I feel very removed from this kind of situation. And even having read it, I'm not entirely sure, still at this point, what it is that's so problematic about it. Because I just don't know. The story, to give you a brief synopsis, just to put what I'm saying here into context, is about a woman and her son who are moving through Mexico, on foot, on bus, traveling north to get to the American border so they can cross over and have a better life. Now, what I can say, what I do know, is that there definitely are some stereotypes throughout this book. I didn't find them to be too many, but again, I don't know. I'm not someone who should say, I don't know. So when I go and I do my research, if I feel like I need to make a short video to address anything else from what I have found out, I'll do that, and that'll go up early next week. If I don't, then I'll just leave it be. But I'm very, very interested to do the research and find out why this book is so upsetting to so many people. Because I know that this has struck a chord with so many people, like in a bad way, with so many people. Another thing that I do know just from holding the book and looking at the book is that the author is also, like me, a white woman. And maybe that is lending itself to, maybe people feel that this is not her story to tell. And that's completely fair. That's completely fair. But, I guess also where's the line when, as artists and creators, if you have a story you want to tell, I don't know that it's great to start limiting who can tell what kind of stories if they're told well and with compassion, which to me this seemed like it was. But again, I don't know. I feel really awkward talking about this, but I still wanted to share my thoughts and share with you guys, especially if you're out there and you've heard the murmurings about the book and about the controversies and whatnot, but you don't know what the book's about. I'm going to give you a full of spoilers. If you don't want spoilers, don't watch this. But I'm going to spoil it for you so you can know what the book is about, and that, maybe like me, you can get a bit more up to date, and then you can dive in and do your own research as well. So also, please, if you are watching this and you're like, listen, I can tell you why it's problematic, do so in the comments, respectfully, of course, but just please know that I want to know. I want to know why this, I want to know what the problems are with this so that I can better understand, right? Because that's how we learn and grow, because like I said, this book is living up north, up in Canada, like way up north. It's just, I don't know a lot about this topic, about these situations, you know, about Mexican families and what they go through. So please do, in the comments, let me know. All right, let's get into this. So right off the bat, this book starts with an absolutely horrific massacre. We meet our main characters, Lydia and Luca. They're a mother and son. Luca's 8. Lydia's, I don't know, probably in her 30s. And we meet them right off the bat. Luca's in the bathroom. He's using the bathroom. And a bullet comes whizzing in through the window, I think. And all of a sudden, Lydia is on him. She is throwing him into the shower, onto the floor of the tub, to protect him. And it's just a fluke that they're in the bathroom and not outside. Luca had to go, and he wanted his mom to stand guard, because one time when he was in the bathroom, one of his cousins accidentally walked in, and he didn't want that to happen again. Lydia can hear men outside doing the violence, and once it all settles down, she goes outside and finds that her husband, her mother, her sister's children have all been murdered. They've all been murdered. And the reason they were all gathered together was because it was her niece's quinceañera. I hope I'm saying that right, which is a 15th birthday party. So obviously she's very shocked. Her husband is on the ground, Sebastian, and he has a note pinned to his chest that is later revealed to have the message, my whole family's dead because of me. The police come, and you know, they're doing their thing, and Lydia immediately starts planning to run with her son, because she knows that clearly her and Luca were supposed to be part of this massacre. She knows that it was performed or carried out by the leader of the cartel in Acapulco. That's where they live. At one point, one of the police officers is like, you know, don't go home right now, because they're at her mother's house for the party. Don't go home right now, hang back, one of my guys will take you somewhere safe. That immediately sets off red flags, because she knows that in the city where she lives, a lot of the police are also working for the cartel, or at least are on the cartel's payroll. So she doesn't want anyone to know where she's going. So she starts gathering her things. She grabs a bag, she starts putting things in it. She gets the keys to her car from her dead husband's pocket. She goes and grabs things from there, but she doesn't want to take the car because that will be instantly recognizable, because her husband was the one who always drove it. So she starts off, she has some cash, quite a bit, and she grabbed her mother's wallet, so she has her mother's money as well, her mother's bank card, and they start off on foot, and they make it to a hotel for the first night. Now, after a little bit, we find out that Lydia has a bit of a tie to this cartel. Now, I mean, well, you'll see. First of all, though, her husband, Sebastian, he was a journalist, and, you know, apparently in Acapulco, or in Mexico in general, that's a very dangerous profession. And what used to happen is, whenever Sebastian would write a particularly controversial piece for the paper, the company would take his family and put them in a hotel for a few days until things blew over, just until they knew for sure that there wasn't really any retaliation coming. There's no fear of retaliation. So as we get into it, we learn that Lydia herself, what she does is she owns a bookstore. And she stocks it full of books that she loves, you know, as you would. She puts some in there that are just, you know, commercial hits that she knows will sell, and then she fills it with books that she loves, her favorite books. And one day a man comes in I'm guessing this is like a few months maybe before this all happens. And he comes in and he brings to the till 2 of her favorites, and she's of course very taken by this, and she strikes up a conversation with him about it because, you know, those are 2 of her favorite books, and they build a friendship from there. He begins to visit often. They talk about books. They have a cup of coffee together. He starts sharing his own poetry with her. Now, if you can see where I'm going with this, that is Javier, the leader of the cartel, but of course she doesn't know it at that point. But a few days, I guess, before the massacre, her husband had written an expose on the new leader of the cartel, and that was Javier. So when she found that out, of course, she was very, very surprised. I just said a few days, but I'm thinking it was a few weeks, like when Sebastian starts writing the expose is when she finds out. And she actually brings it up with Javier the next time he comes into the shop, and he's like, I thought you knew. And she's like, no, I didn't know. And so then at home, she knows that Sebastian is working on this piece. So once he gets it finished, he asks her to read it, and he gets her opinion on it. And she actually feels pretty good about it. It's all truthful, but it paints Javier in not too dark of a light. You know, Sebastian says, you know, while there's still a lot of murders here, the murder rate is down a bit since Javier took over. And when Lydia's done reading the article, she's like, you know what? Okay, we're okay. I don't think he's gonna hate this. Fast forward a little bit, and we find out that clearly he did hate it, because now her whole entire family's dead. And like the note pinned to Sebastian's chest implies it's because of him. Or doesn't imply, straight up says. So it's a while before we know the events that played out on Javier's end to lead up to him snapping and killing her whole family, but we do find that out. But first, we see her and Luca traveling their little hearts out, trying to get to the north, to the border. And along the way, you know, they have a lot of difficulties. They have to travel by train, but not just like getting on the train. They have to get on the top of the train and travel that way. And that's quite the ordeal. It's on the top of one of those trains that they meet 2 girls, Soledad and Rebecca, who are sisters. They're like 14 and 16, and they're traveling together. Quickly, these girls become adopted family to Lydia and Luca. And, you know, Lydia loves them and protects them and takes care of them. And so they travel together. Eventually, another young man named Lorenzo joins their group, and Luca immediately recognizes him from the hotel, the first hotel they stayed at. And when they were at that hotel, Lydia got a delivery, and in the envelope was a book, one of the books that her and Javier had loved. And there's a note inside, and it's just kind of Javier letting her know that he knows where she is. Like, she's not that hidden, he knows. Which of course terrifies her, as it would. And so yeah, so they recognize, or Luca first recognizes this man from the first hotel, and he's got a tattoo on the back of his ear that's like a machete with like blood drops, and that's like the cartel's symbol. So she gets worried at first. She worries that this is one of Javier's men who's been following them and who's going to try to kill them. Eventually, the young man approaches them. He introduces himself as Lorenzo. They get to talking. He asks Lydia what her name is, and she tells him a fake name, and he's like, no, that's not your name. And she's like, what do you mean? And he shows her on his phone a picture of her and Javier in the bookstore, and he's like, listen, everybody has this photo. Everybody knows to be on the lookout for you. And she's like, oh my God, like, are you going to turn me in? What are you going to do? And he's like, no, I'm also on the run, trying to get away from the cartel. He's like, after everything that I've seen and everything that's happened, I just wanted to get out of here, and I'm also going north. So she's really suspicious about this. She doesn't want to get too close to him or let him, let her guard down around him, because she's worried that he's lying and that he is working for Javier. So they keep traveling. A lot of the book is traveling. So I'm not going to bore you too much with the traveling details. There's a lot that happens there, but we'd be here forever if I was to get into every single detail that happens while they're traveling. So instead I will kind of fast forward to when they get to the border city where they're going to be crossing, and they meet up with their coyote. A coyote is someone who helps immigrants or migrants travel across the border to get from Mexico to America. That I did know from Weeds, because I saw Weeds. And anyway, so that's where they kind of take to traveling on foot through the desert, trying to avoid the US Border Patrol and also vigilantes who are out there on their own just trying to catch people trying to cross the border illegally. So as they're traveling across on foot through the desert, there's quite a few of them. There's Lydia and Luca and Lorenzo, the two sisters, Soledad and Rebecca. This other little boy named Beto, who unfortunately dies. He has asthma, and he dies when they're almost there. But he has asthma and no inhaler, and he ends up not being able to complete the journey, and it's very sad. At one point, they stop while they're traveling and they set up camp, because in the daytime, of course, they're traveling through the desert. At the peak daytime hours, you can't hike through the desert. Like, you'll die from the heat and the sun and the dehydration. So during those peak hours, they camp and try to sleep, and then they travel mostly at night. So at one point while they're camped, Rebecca, she's the younger sister, she goes to use the bathroom, kind of like in a cave behind a rock. And while she's in there, she finds out that Lorenzo has followed her in there. And right away, as soon as she sees him, she gets a little nervous, and she had every right to, because once she starts trying to leave when she's done using the bathroom, he's like, oh, I'm just here to use the bathroom too. Then when she goes to leave, he grabs her and he tries to assault her. And just when he's about to, we hear the coyote's voice say, get off of her right now or I'll kill you. So he does. He looks up, he sees the coyote with a gun. He gets up. After that happens, Rebecca's sister, Soledad, she comes in and she sees what he was trying to do. She's like, no. Because that's why her and her sister are headed north in the first place, to escape men like that who had done horrible things to Soledad, the older sister, who, at this point is still only 16 years old. And those people had been getting ready to do it to her sister too, and she had, instead of letting that happen, she had hit the road with her, and it cost them everything. And she was not about to let that be for naught and let her sister get assaulted like this by a creep like Lorenzo. And she pulls the trigger. She takes the gun from the coyote and she pulls the trigger. The coyote doesn't really try to stop her. He lets her do it because Lorenzo's a scumbag. So from there, kind of everyone leaves the cave and they're getting ready to keep walking. They're almost there to the RVs that are waiting for them, that are going to take them to Arizona. And, or at that point they'll be in Arizona. I'm not sure which. So while they had been traveling, Lydia had found out from Lorenzo what it was that had made Javier snap. Time as friends and getting to know each other, Lydia learned from Javier that he had a teenage daughter who was in boarding school in Barcelona, who he loved more than anything. She was his whole entire world. So, after the article came out about Javier, he originally did have the kind of reaction that Lydia thought he would. He thought it was truthful and that it painted him in a pretty good light. So he wasn't upset about it. It's certainly not what caused him to retaliate the way that he did. However, the day before he kills Lydia's entire family, somebody had sent his daughter a copy of the article. And I guess she had never known who and what her father was. You know, to her, he was just her dad. She didn't know that he was a criminal. And not just a criminal like, you know, the head of the cartel. Just real bad. And she doesn't take it well. And she ends up taking her own life and leaving a note behind addressed specifically to her father's. And that note says something to the effect of, you know, what's one more death for you? Here you go. You know, just another body to add to the list. And that breaks him. He's absolutely heartbroken because, like I said, to her, she was everything. To him, she was everything. So he decides that he's going to take everything from the person who caused this to happen. And that's what leads us up to, that's what takes him to doing such extreme measures. So now, fast forward again, Lorenzo has been shot by Soledad. Lydia goes to look at the body and she sees his cell phone. And she picks it up and she sees that Javier has been texting him. So, you know, he swore up and down that he was getting out, that he had no connection to Javier. You know, he was out of that business now, but Javier had been texting him. They've been texting back and forth the entire time she had been on the road. So Lorenzo had been following her the whole time. So she takes the phone and she FaceTimes Javier. She goes out and tries to find, you know, a couple of bars. She finds him, she FaceTimes him, and he's like, Lydia. And she says that the way he says her name is so comforting, which is so, because he's still the friend that she knew, but he had done such horrible things. So she hates him more than she hates anything or anybody. The way she words it is she hates him more than she loved her husband. Like, the hatred is so extreme that it's not like anything she's felt before. But yet, when he says her name, there's that part of her that's kind of taken, you know, the feelings are so conflicting because he says her voice in such a tender, familiar way. She says, you know what, we're alive, and sorry to disappoint you, we're staying that way. This has to be over now. And he says to her, he says, if I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. And that's when it kind of all comes together in her head, how true that statement is. How she tried to be so stealthy and traveling across the country and congratulating herself on doing so good and keeping her and her son safe. She realizes now it was because, you know, it was orchestrated that way. It was, he made it that way, not her. Anyway, she says, you know, we have to be done with this. We're done. Like, nobody else needs to die. Please, like, let's just be done with this. And I'll read you the passage. He says her name, Lydia. His face is haggard, skeletal. I never wished for your death, he says. Surely you know that, Lydia. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. She blinks, pulls the camera away from her face. She closes her mouth and surveys the desert landscape. And suddenly she knows what he's saying to be exactly true. All this time, all her planning, all her strategy and self-congratulations, it was all an illusion. I could never harm you, Lydia. Her mouth opens with a gasp. Harm? You could never harm me? You have harmed me. You have tortured me. You have destroyed my whole world. Everything. And so it just kind of goes on, and she says, you know, it has to be done. It has to be done. And then she takes the phone and she throws it away, and she continues on her trip, finishing up the end of the journey. Then we get an epilogue where, you know, it's a few months later, I think, or a month later, and her and her son are living with the two girls. They had an uncle there, so they're all living together. They're all pitching in. You know, they all have jobs. They're all doing the best that they can. And that's how the story ends. So there you have it. If you've been wondering what the story was all about, now you know. I thought it was well written. And I don't mean well written in that, you know, the stories are told properly. Because again, I don't know. But the prose, the way she the way she puts sentences together. They're very beautiful, they're poetic, it's very well technically written. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. There were times when I cried a lot. Like, oh my goodness, just there's many scenes where I just cry a lot, especially scenes of reflection where she's looking back at the family that she's lost, when it talks about, you know, how Luca will now grow up without his dad. There's parts from that really just get me. There's a few parts with the sisters, Soledad and Rebecca, that just break my absolute heart. Oh yeah, there's definitely, I shed quite a few tears reading this. It's not a page turner by any stretch of the imagination. It took me a while to get through it, and last night I knew I wanted to film this video today, so I had to get through it. I had about 150 pages, and I just had to sit and commit to getting through it so that I could make this video. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was well written, technically, like the prose, beautiful. And I cared about the people. I liked that the family were, you know, they didn't make it like some poor family of criminals trying to cross the border to cause trouble in America. You know, it was a family, a hard-working family. You know, she owned her own bookstore. Her husband had been a journalist. Hard-working family who were trying to escape with their lives, and they needed a safe place to go, and that, you know, immediately when they were trying to figure out where to go, America, to go to be safe, somewhere where they could live and have the best chance to start over. So I did like that aspect of it, you know. I liked that. And I cared about these people, the sisters, Lydia, Luca, the coyote. I was even interested in learning more about him. Like, just every character, I cared about them. I cared about their plight. I wished for their safety. And yeah, to me that's very important in a story. But like I said, I'm gonna go now, do my research, figure out what the heck, you know, what it is, the exact details of why this book is so problematic, so that I can educate myself and learn more about it, because it's just something that is far away from my experience and I just don't know about. So like I said as well, if I need to make another video to address anything that I have learned, I will do that early in the week. Also, in the comments down below, let me know a book that deals with this sort of situation, these sort of topics, but that you feel is done well, that you feel is done right, because I would love to read that and support authors who are telling the stories of maybe their people, the stories that need to be told. Because like I say, I want to learn more. I want to know more. All right, you guys. Ooh, I'm gonna leave it there for now. I hope you enjoyed this book talk, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts down below, respectfully, of course. And I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you Monday with another vlog. Bye, guys.